Hello and welcome to the Wise Yourself Up podcast. I am your host, Carla McGreevy, and in today's episode, we are going to talk about resistance. How are we today? How are you doing? I am recording from Mallorca after how many days off? 5 days off. I'm so confused in my days now. I would like you to hear the ocean, but it's facing me, which is stunning. And the lighting was too bad for me to have the ocean as the background. And good lighting wins over background content. I have been having the biggest rest. I haven't had a rest like this probably since I think I took a week's rest at the start of the year in Bali. It's mad how time flies. And I do live and work and train cyclically, where there is weeks where I rest more, but I am always moving, whether that's like a light yoga class or walking or doing some sort of work on some sort of content and meeting people and all the things that we do. I barely spoke to anybody since being here. I didn't make any content. I haven't worked. I've just literally slept and ate and read and done nothing, and it's been great. I feel so good. So I would highly recommend it. Hopefully you can hear it in my voice, the difference of good rest. I worked intensely for the month of September with the Wave Effect women, and I really feel the benefit of rest. I notice I'm just getting a wee bit afraid, easily agitated, different things will be coming up. Also, this year I have got really strong again in terms of I can do 10 chin-ups on the rings, which was a goal of mine. I really badly injured my shoulder in November 2020. So that's been a long recovery in healing that injury. And I can pike press. So there was goals, movement goals that, I never thought would be possible for my body again. And I think once you receive the benefits of rest, you're more motivated to do it, because a lot of people, what I notice is they just run at 90 miles an hour until burnout, and always thinking more is going to serve. And especially for women's bodies, it definitely doesn't serve minds anyway. So I literally haven't even walked. I haven't practiced any yoga in terms of practice meditation, but not physical yoga. And it's funny what that can bring up to you. I have friends who are going to be like, what did you do? What training did you do? What content did you make? And there's that pressure you feel from external world, and especially people who live their life like that. I'm thinking of a particular friend who loves content and loves training, who's going to be like, I can't believe you did nothing. So it's noticing what that brings up for me, and especially that male energy of push, go, go, which serves their bodies more than ours also. So I'll let you know how that conversation goes with him when I tell him I've done absolutely nothing, haven't walked the length of myself. But I really know that deep rest is so healing for the body and mind, and for creativity and for focus. I'm someone who struggles with focus. I would struggle to be in a room for more than an hour. I have tools and practices in place to help me be able to focus for longer periods. And, now I'm entering a work period that'll take me right up to Christmas without, I won't be having this level of a break apart from the weekends. Also, everybody here is in a couple, so that's my crack. Which you imagine for this time of year, don't you? And I went to an adults-only hotel. I just fancied staying in a hotel. I wanted everything to be super easy. And so there's loads of couples. A lot of them are around retirement age. And what I cannot get over is how many incredible sets of breasts I've seen. I try not to say anything negative about my body, but I have the breasts of a woman who looks like she's breastfed all the kids in Ireland. And that's just due to the pill. When I took the pill when I was younger, I was 32E. And my weight hasn't jumped up and down. Like, I think my weight varies between like 1.5 stone, 2 stone, between my lightest and my heaviest, which I don't think that's wild. But my boobs seem to think it's wild. But yeah, very jealous of the women and their incredible breasts. I'm reading a book, which I'm not loving, which I'm not going to name actually. It's a comedy book. But I'm noticing it's causing a reaction in me. It's causing some tension in me. Is the author, she jokes about rape, and it's her experience, so she's every right to talk about it how she wants. But it just does not sit well with me. It's just not what I like in terms of humor, and it's always been a big issue of debate, hasn't it, in the comedy world about jokes around rape and paedophilia. And I'm just very clear my boundary is no, and I don't want to engage with material like that. And if it's for you, it's for you, and if it's not, it's not. I personally find it's quite easy shock material, and it really grates on me when it's a white male doing it. But that's my opinion. I obviously binged that Adam Brody show. What do you call it? Nobody Wants This. Scrambled egg TV is what I call that. I devoured it on the Friday, my first day here, which was lovely. Lovely, easy TV. And then I've been going down the Sex in the City hole while I've been here just for the crack. And yeah, there's some really annoying parts to it, isn't it? Like, see the way Carrie gets on with your man, the furniture maker. I mean, you want to strangle her sometimes. And just the brilliance of Samantha. And how ahead of its time it was. I think it's one of the first shows that ever talked or referenced, showed tampons on screen and women talking about sex. And it was definitely ahead of the culture in Ireland and the UK. And I've noticed that in conversations with American women who would be around 60, and then the Irish women around 60 here, in terms of if you had an unwanted pregnancy, what was available to you and the conditioning around that. So yeah, I'm all biz to go back to work and to get stuck into the Gabor Mate course more. And yeah, that's it. I'm actually back in Ireland and I'm freaking out because I want to go for a swim. And I thought it was cold here this morning. It was 14 degrees, so I'm fresh from a wee dip in the ocean. And yeah, I've been loving the ocean and sauna life here, very relaxing. And then I'm like, what? Why am I living in London? But then it's also because I get bored easily, so a big city suits me. But how am I going to get back in the Irish Sea? So if anybody wants to join me, I already have an anxiety about it. When I used to live in Belfast, I would have went to the ocean every week, all year round. And you don't really notice the difference in temperature because you're so accustomed to it. But when there's a big break, I think it can be shocking to the system. Okay. Lots of you messaged me last week about how the episode resonated with you around how hardwired you are to do and to constantly be doing and thinking. And it's very difficult for you to truly rest and relax. And you experience a lot of resistance when you do. Well, you're in good company. I have to be, I've said this before, I'm like my worst client that I can meet. The most resistance, very clever with my resistance too, oh, but I really like burning myself every other month and all the things that we say and do. But it's important, first of all, just to remember we are hardwired capitalist machines. And us deconditioning, letting go of that resistance and healing is an act of rebellion. And change is always hard. We see it in everything. When an organization needs to change, there has to be change in a relationship. There needs to be change in this world. It's not easy. It's always really hard. And another level of complexity to this, especially as women, is that our self-worth for a lot of us is very ingrained with doing and producing, because that's been the role of a woman throughout our generations and our bloodline. So for us to not do as much, to not produce as much, is going to create a lot of fear, anxiety, and bring up a lot of that conditioning from the patriarchy in us. So naturally, it's so normal that we feel high levels of resistance and, just feeling loads of discomfort with doing less. Never mind adding on top the generational trauma and being the first in your bloodline to heal, to sit with pain, which is just the calling of the era that we're in. It's what, spiritual writers will talk about. We are more intelligent than our ancestors emotionally. 2-year-olds are smarter than what 2-year-olds were years ago. And that's just the nature of evolution. And of course, there's a lot to be said for old ways and practices to be honored. But our bodies are becoming way more sensitive to awaken us in this world. So I just want to start with that, to note that the The environment we are in are set against us to rest and be, right? And you will be healing not only your trauma, but the trauma of your ancestors, and noticing the resistance that you were taught by your community, by your bloodline, whether that's addiction lies in your family, repressing, avoiding, distracting. And I believe everybody's addicted to thinking and doing. And it's something that we're all needing to heal. So how do you begin to do less without absolutely hating yourself? How do you learn to be when it feels horrendous and every thought that you think is like, fuck this shit? I think intention is so important, is to remember your intention of why are you wanting to do this? Why are you learning to be? Because that changes everything. Get really clear on your why. Intention always changes the results and how we make what we're doing. There's a quote, and I can't remember who it's from, is intention is the mother of all change. So if you're really needing change in your life, think about your intention, right? So basically doing less and learning to feel and be is really learning to attune to the incredible power that you have in your body as a woman. And a world that does not want that, in a world that has controlled and kept women small by keeping us disconnected and shaming us a lot as a method of control. So here's a few reasons of intention, of what could be your intention for sitting. So for example, health. Maybe you're from a history of autoimmune diseases, you're at risk of illness, which we all are. But remember that sitting and being is the most powerful thing that you can do for your health, because you're giving your energy away from all the energy your brain absorbs and into your cells. Your body is wired for health. And what happens is when we interfere too much, we do too much, we think too much, the body becomes out of balance. It becomes dysfunctional, especially when we don't give it space to breathe and to feel emotions and allow it to process and rest. So a lot of women are learning these skills for health reasons, especially, I'm sure you've all heard of this, 80% of the people who have autoimmune diseases are women. Gabor Mate attributes that to women being conditioned to do and produce and neglect themselves, not being able to identify their needs. And you can't identify your needs if there's no space in your day. How can you listen if you're constantly doing? It's impossible. And through the wave effect, for example, you are sitting with yourself for 30 minutes a day. It's quite an active sit in terms of there is periods of silence, but there's also tools such as breath work and movement, more breath work and movement and chanting and different things that are so powerful in quieting the mind, especially if you're someone who has the qualities of ADHD and are processing trauma. It can feel impossible to sit and be. So because I struggled so much with it, it's I was like, this is never going to happen for me. There's no way I'm ever going to be able to sit and be for a minute. Fuck this. And I've told you before, I used to run out of yoga classes. I wouldn't sit for Shavasana because I was like, what a waste of time. Because that's also sneaky resistance, just being a slobber and not doing what you're told. So through this course, there were women who had questions that they were unsure about, and they shared with me that they were astounded at the difference they felt of how much more certain they became about what action they needed to do. For example, one girl was going to an exercise class and she was noticing that there was some resistance to the class in terms of the teacher. I don't know the details around the teacher. Maybe it just wasn't a good fit. But her body was having a strong reaction to it. And the more she had this space in the morning, the more she made the connection between issues in her gut and this class. And she stopped the class and she can't believe how powerful and how certain she became about this decision, how powerful her body was in telling the truth. The body always tells the truth. The mind does not. The mind's a big spoofer. And so there's loads of these stories within the group, which is, I just love it. I just love women connecting to the power. And I always doubted this. I thought it was a load of shit. I was like, what does the body know? Because I was so attached to thinking. When we're fear-based, we're very attached to thinking. When we're coming into the body, we're coming into a sense of safety again. Also in the group, I shouldn't be laughing. It's just like there's so many breakups at the minute. I can't understand it. I mean, crazy energy at the minute in terms of there's breakups left, right, and centre. Marriages ending, 10-year relationships, like big relationships ending. There was breakups within the group. There was women who came to the group with heartbreak, and then there was women who became more certain that the right decision for them was to leave the person. And it's always asking the question when you're deciding about a breakup is, let love motivate you. Do it out of an act of love, not out of, don't stay with someone because you're fearful of not meeting someone new. And please do not stay with someone in the hope that they're going to change. That it is not fair on you and it is not fair on them. There's actually a wee quote in the book I was slabbering about, but I'll read it. As you get older, there's a freedom in accepting and celebrating people as they are, rather than trying to force them into a role they were never made for. Okay? And so the next step into learning how to sit and be with yourself is the more you get these tastes of the power of your body and how much she will tell you and guide you into the path of everything that you desire, it's easier to meet the resistance, right? And when I tell you, there's been times I've been in training, so my somatics training, obviously my daddy had just died in September, so I wasn't in a good headspace. And I fought with myself every single fucking day. I mean, I over-efforted. I thought too much. I was trying to rush it. I was too in my head and I suffered. But that's how powerful these moments of gold are in meditation, and like how blissful you can feel, the sense of love you can feel in your body. And Gabor Mate talks about this too. Once you just even get a few seconds of how orgasmic that can feel, that's all you need, in my experience, for me, to keep showing up. And the thing is, the reason I suffered for so long, the reason why it took me like 6 weeks to stop rushing, because I'm so hardwired for it, to stop demanding things because I'm a brat, which so many of you are too. It's because I still wasn't surrendering. When you move too fast, you're missing the information. How can you hear if you're going too fast? If you're demanding and moving too fast, then you're not meeting the energy. Do you know what I mean? There has to be a meeting in the body. And when there's that over-efforting, it's disrupting things. There needs to be a softness in the meeting of the information. It has to be an act of love, and there's no force with love. When I was moving too fast and still demanding and still rushing, and to be fair to me, to be compassionate to me, I was in the early throes of grief. And there's some of you listening who are in those stages too, and you're doing the best you can, you know. And I just didn't know how to relax into it, and it took me a long time to get to there. I realised I was still demanding and still trying to rush past the pain, which is understandable when it's really, really tough pain. Another piece of resistance that you can meet is always, what I notice in my clients and the women I work with, is always prioritising work. Whether your goal is to meditate for 5 or 10 minutes a day, I would start with 1 minute. I personally meditated for a minute for, I would say, a few years. I mean, I was the most distracted, tense, overthinker, dissociative, I don't know, all the things, right? So a minute was a big task for me to be able to sit and focus, right? So whether it's 1 minute to 30 minutes, which, you know, that's been a journey of 10 years for me to go from 1 minute to now being able to sit with 30, which isn't all the time, but 80% of the time I can. And I find it hugely resourceful and the most important practice I have in my life. But what I noticed in the course is the conditioning that women have to put work before themselves. You know, they'll show up to work every day and they'll never have a sick day, but yet they can't show up to themselves for 5 minutes. Always putting work in front of them. And you can give me all the excuses that the cows come on, because I've said it. You know, when I was freelance, my periods stopped. Oh, I have to work so much, I'm freelance. Oh, I have to. This scarcity mentality. And in Tantra, we want to come from abundance, because abundance is always there for the taking. But we grew up in Christian communities, most of us here listening, and Christians love to make you think life has to be suffering for it to be worthwhile. There is a definite addiction to suffering. And don't get me wrong, there is some people, yes, I get it, you know, it is hard to take a breath. But even, you know, a mother with a newborn, And I mean this, like, can we not work together to create a world where, like, a woman has a community around her where she can take 5 minutes to breathe, 10 minutes, whatever it may be? What a difference that would make to women's mental health if we had community again. And there is a gorgeous woman, Dr. Rosie, I think that's her name online. I will drop her name underneath this. She started a mothers group in Belfast, if that's where you are. And if you have any other groups that are helping community around for young mothers, please let me know. On the flip, I work with a lot of single women who cannot sit for 5 minutes, who are telling me they don't have the time, who aren't looking after anybody, who don't have sick parents, there's nothing but themselves and work. And that's wild. That's wild how much there is that conditioning to put work before ourselves. And, I did it for a long time, and I have to be mindful of not falling back into that hole of giving the best of me to work, because I want to give the best of me. And that's a decision I make for myself. And it's a decision you have to make for yourself, is who wants to get the best of you. And think about your older self. Jamil, did you all see her speech? What a woman. Do it for your older self. Don't be on your deathbed thinking, fuck, I give everything to everyone but myself. And especially if you're single and you want to meet a life partner, then use this time to really get to know yourself. And you only know yourself in stillness and silence, because an intimate relationship is going to trail you by the hair. Yes, it'll be unicorns and rainbows and all that stuff, but I'm talking 10-year, 20-year, depending on your age, it's going to be hard, and they're going to trigger you in all the ways. And there will always be an element of losing yourself to a degree. And we have to make sure we have the practices in place that we have interdependence in a relationship. And I think that's really supported by having a deeper connection to yourself. And also, if you do want kids, I mean, it must be really hard for a young mother. If I think about if I had kids younger and not learned those skills, or if I had been in a time of tragedy to learn these skills, it would be really hard, right? It's not impossible, but it's a harder circumstance. So if you're in the position where things aren't difficult right now, I really beg you to seek that opportunity. Does that make sense? Because it's really fucking hard. Even when life's really good, this is really hard stuff. It's really hard skills that you're learning to free yourself, to let go of the conditioning. And I mean, I have so much respect for the women who are doing it in their darkest days. And I'm sending you all so much love. And more so, on top of that, is when we think about our older lady self, you don't want to regret that you didn't play enough. And constant doing and thinking, there's no room for play. I think I'm a very playful person, right? I'm a messer. I notice that myself in courses and, in movement classes. I'm always the one who wants to play and mess around. And yeah, that's just my nature. Even though I'm working with trauma and heavy stuff, I bring a very playful nature to it. And it's one of the skill requirements that Gabor Mate talks about in working with trauma. And it massively gets lost where it gets too heavy, naturally so. And when I was younger, trauma really robbed me of that ability to play. Imagination is very difficult with people with high levels of trauma, and it can all come back. If you've been listening this far into the podcast, first of all, thank you so, so much. I just love the gorgeous community that is building with this podcast. I wanted to interrupt just to say that if you're feeling stuck and you feel like you're going around in circles with your healing journey, it can be a sign that you are too much in your head when it comes to healing. The body communicates 80-20 to the brain, and that's why a bottom approach works best, which is what I offer. The body and breath are the true vehicles for change. To breathe is to feel, is to heal. So if you're ready to finally truly love yourself and listen to what your body is trying to communicate to you, I offer online one-to-one therapeutic sessions to help you to do this. In the sessions, we work together using breath work, somatic movement, to help you move through any resistance you're currently holding, and to help you get to the heart of what your body is really trying to tell you. And that's where I come in. I can help you see where the body and the mind are telling two different things, and it's to remember that the body always tells the truth. So if you're someone who's really ready to go all in on your healing journey, head to the link in my show notes to apply to work with me one-to-one. Okay, let's get back to the episode. So tips to actually be able to sit with yourself. Number one would be to move. Okay, so in my first yoga teacher training, I think I've talked about this before, but anyway, here we go. In my first yoga teacher training, you had to sit for 90 fucking minutes. 90 minutes. Jesus wept. I didn't read that because obviously I don't read any instructions, especially me before doing any sort of work on healing. I was wired to the moon. So obviously I didn't read anything apart from it was yoga teacher training course in Bali. 90 minutes I had to sit and be with myself. So basically I couldn't sit at all. I would fall asleep. So my system became so overwhelmed that I would just exit. It was way too much for my system at that time. Okay. So this is everything when it comes to healing is so nuanced. It's so individual. There's not one rule fits all. So it depends on where you're at with yourself. Okay. This was my experience. And then we practiced the yoga. So I had a really hard time. I would have laid down for most of the meditation, and it used to feel like things were crawling all over my body. The physical discomfort was really, really high. And a lot of healers would talk about that is trauma leaving your body, the body completing, and you're feeling a lot of discomfort that you were never able to sit with before, which makes sense to me. Like I ran life like a blue arch fly all my life, so this made sense. And so if you're noticing the discomfort's high, you probably just need to move more. Okay, so movement, and as you become more skilled at being with yourself, you will need less movement. You'll need less interference with the system. And when you're at parts of your life where you're going through a lot of change and a lot of trauma, you may need more movement. So then the second time I went on my 300-hour advanced yoga teacher training course, In-Depth Sex and Wealth. The part of the course was to do yoga nidra every day. And I remember being like, holy good fuck, that's my worst nightmare. So yoga nidra is basically where you lie there for 30 minutes. I mean, I was like, I'd rather die, because in between my first training and my second training, I did a lot of guided meditation. So that would be my recommendation for you. I have an online library. There's the Headspace app, and start short, like a minute to 5 minutes, and then work your way up slowly in guided meditation where you're repeating mantras, you're doing breath work, and you can really receive the benefits through that. So I was doing very active meditations for those years between 2017 and 2019. So when I had to lie there, and there was no breath work, there was no mantra and chanting, I like things quite loud, like tapping. Like I love tapping. It's really, really powerful. It's really, really powerful with people who feel quite disconnected from their bodies. It's one of my favorite tools, and I see it works so well with so many women, as well as humming and sounding. So the fact that I would be in silence, just listening to a woman for 30 minutes, I was like, I really regret this decision, but it was a great experience. But in this course, we moved first and then we sat for 90 minutes, and I realized how much better that was for my system. However, I realized that I wasn't receiving as many benefits from meditation because I exert too much energy through my movement. I'm always, and it's, well, maybe not so much now, but definitely this stage of my life, I would have put a lot of physical effort into my yoga practice. And I was always doing the hardest poses and all that crack. And then my system would have been too fatigued to truly attend, to truly be present. It's hard to really be present when you're fatigued. And then that motivated me to then switch to meditate and then move, which was when I changed. So it's individual for you all where you're at and what you're needing. And then in my last training, my somatic training with Tara Judell in January 2020, was that January 2023? It was 3. We meditated for 90 minutes and then moved, and that worked really well for me, which is like 10 years into this journey of trying to learn to really attune to the powers within. And with the women I work with, it's really, noticing what the body's telling them they need. If there's too much agitation, you're falling asleep, it sounds like you need to move more. And then when you're starting off, it's noticing what's coming up for you. It's noticing, maybe we'll go more into this next week, maybe it's getting a wee bit long. So for example, if you go into planning, or do the kids need fed, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Or you're thinking, oh, I should start that dance class I was thinking about. It's normal. So just catching the nature of the thought, whether they're thoughts of fantasy, planning, if they're worry, just noticing what your tendencies are of the mind, noticing the nature of your mind. And then once you catch your own thought, it will always mirror sensation in your body. Every thought you feel mirrors sensation in your body, whether you can register that or not. If I had you scanned up to something that picked up on your electromagnetic field, you would see the correspondence between mind and body. So when you catch your own thoughts and you notice the nature, drop into your body and notice what's there. What is the mind perhaps distracting you from? And stick with the physical sensation, the heat, the itchy skin. If your legs are moving a lot, jittery, and just ask what's there, what emotions there. And for most people, you probably need to work with someone for that, because there's lots of layers to, I wouldn't have been able to learn this skill alone. Most of the time, in my experience, people will give you the surface layer thing that they first see, because there can be lots of disguises upon our wounds. It's like an onion. It takes many times to actually get to the core wound that's coming up, which is usually from when you first met it in childhood. And then what we'd want to do is some inner child work of healing the core wounds for freedom, because those core wounds left unattended leads to us repeating family patterns and repeating the same energy in our relationships. And if we really want to experience great love with ourselves, we need to accept and hold all the parts of ourselves, including our younger self. Okay, I'm going to finish with this. Look at your family line. Look how your mum and dad feel their emotions. Look at how they've struggled in life, and know that your resistance is part of their resistance, and that you are paving the way of change. My granny, for example, never rested. God love her. She reared 7 kids, like har, as they say in Belfast. How did she do that? Also probably fueled by the trauma of the Troubles in Belfast, the worry of her children, getting murdered, as so common it was then, especially going up in West Belfast. She never stopped, and she would feel so guilty for stopping. And so if you notice that thread of guilt when you do less, remember that's why the women before you never attended, and to sit with the guilt and tell it what it needs to hear, that you are so worthy of rest. You are not put in this earth just to serve everyone around you like the women before you. And obviously there's lots of different layers that can come up with that. Oh, also, one of my motivations, I'm going really skew with this here, one of my motivations for resting and being is there's talk of an hour-long orgasm. There is talk of depths of pleasure I could never imagine. And that can't be accessed if we're wired to force and push and sprint through life. Ain't nobody sprinting to an orgasm. You know the difference between an orgasm with your hand, an orgasm through penetration, and an orgasm that a vibrator gets you. Do you know what I mean? I mean, the vibrator orgasm is grand and all, but it doesn't compare. And so learning to meet and be met in your body and breath, and what can be unfolded to you, can be orgasmic. It can be so pleasurable underneath the layers of resistance that we first meet. And not everybody moves through the order. Like I shared my bias experience of healing and meeting these skills. Carl Jung says that the years between your 20s and your 30s are research year, and your life begins at 40. And we need to remember that. Have fun while you're researching. Notice the hardness when you're learning these skills. The impatient brat in you that wants to know it all. It's like when I was learning Spanish and I wasn't fluent in 2 weeks, the fucking devastation was next level. I mean, catch all those parts that we have and start small. Try and be frequent, like any skill. If you're wanting to get better at running, you're going to be needing to run 3 times a week. If you want to be exceptional at something, you need to be doing it like 5 times a week, I would really recommend doing this every day, even just for like a minute. I hope this helps. I hope this answered your question. I'm sending you loads of love. Take care of your wee selves, and I hope to see you next week.